In the world as it looks today, we do need to hold on to things like democracy and individual rights, absolutely. But to ignore the fact that, I mean, people's entire cultures, knowledge systems, their rights were taken away from them in the name of liberalism and has continued until very modern history is precisely why liberalism is becoming a kind of moot ideology at a time when actually it would be needed the most.
We will open up another area of the argument, because I know this can go on in all sorts of directions. I wanted to look at the theme of freedom, actually, because related to liberalism. Does liberalism allow for the only freedom which deserves the name? And is it, as a result, the ideal political framework? I'm going to ask you first, Curtis, because freedom, if you dissociate it from liberalism, is it freedom what you're actually advocating, or are you saying that the freedom that we claim from liberalism isn't real anyway?
I would say that, my ideal, my picture of an ideal monarch comes, I think Frederick the Great comes as close to my picture of that as there is. And Frederick the Great had a really nice line about freedom. He's like, freedom of speech, totally down with that. My view of freedom of speech is they say what they want and I do what I want.
He was also a bloodthirsty conqueror in many ways, so I think we should have to put that on.
Bloodthirsty conqueror.
He killed an awful lot of people.
Are we going back to the questioning the pragmatic sanction?
No, I'm simply saying he might not be an ideal monarch, but carry on.
I think he was an excellent monarch. And I think he was an excellent monarch, and I think the idea of freedom, as Hobbes says, when people talk about freedom, they're not actually seeking the desolate freedom of the wild ass. They're seeking power. And the thing is, when we say that liberalism, that is why you cannot separate the idea of liberalism from the idea of giving intellectuals power. They will sort of go around and around in a circle and basically sort of never admit this in a way, but they are not interested in a Frederick the Great type world.
And should they be?
They should be.
All right. Let me put Yascha, what's your take on that?
Well, look, Aristotle says that monarchy is the best form of government if you have one preeminent person who is full of virtue and will always rule in the interest of the general good. So perhaps I share that with Curtis. That sounds reasonable enough. The problem is, how on earth can you make sure that this person who has absolute power, who the fate of all of us now depends on, is actually going to be the most virtual and the most competent and the most altruistic person? And the deep insight of a liberal tradition is the idea that absolute power corrupts absolutely. But first of all, if this is a hereditary monarchy, sometimes perhaps for 25 years you get lucky and somebody's really amazing, and then they have an idiot son, and then you're stuck being ruled by the idiot son. But even if they start off being really virtuous, because there's no limits on their rule, because everybody's going around flattering them all day long, they're going to end up being really horrible rulers after 5 or 10
because
or
there's
20
no freedom,
years.
Essentially.
Well, this is just to respond to the idea.
Yeah, but freedom is at the core of that. If you don't have freedom, then when things go wrong, you can't do much about it.
Yes, so you need limits on the government in order to make sure that when the government becomes abusive, as it always ends up doing in a dictatorship.
Limits?
Let me just finish.
Okay.
That's sure. And then the question is, okay, what is the purpose of the government? What are the limits on what the government does, whoever is governing? And there, I think, the limits are incredibly important. Whether it is a monarch or whether it is a democratically elected government, you need limits on what that government...
on, to echo what Curtis...
Well, you have checks and balances to make sure that those institutions don't get to tell you how to live. And the key part of that is basic liberties that are guaranteed to individual citizens, like the liberty of speech, the liberty of assembly, the liberty of religion, and so on and so forth.
Through a constitution.
And who guarantees who enforces the Constitution? You've got a kind of passive voice there when you say are guaranteed.
Well, the idea is that first of all you have those rights, and then you have countervailing institutions. So the power is not all in one body. It is split in the United States, for example, between the President and the Senate and the House of Representatives, that you have perhaps a separation of powers between the federal level and the states. You make sure that not all power adheres in one person, so that each branch jealously guards their own powers and makes sure that nobody oversteps what the bounds of legitimate government are supposed to.
Who restricts the power of the Supreme Court?
Well, we're getting to that stage, I think, at the moment, aren't we, in the US? We'll test that one later. Minna, let me bring you on this, because I think it speaks to a lot of what you were saying about the way that liberalism has been and the areas in which it hasn't involved freedom. do you see any connect? I mean, to that question, does liberalism allow for the only freedom that deserves the name, or does it not?
No, I don't think liberalism deserves the name. Probably a more fitting name for how liberalism has been practiced would be superiorism. There's a kind of centering on hierarchy, on control, and a weaponization of rationality in order to justify those. So the philosophy, the political ideology that has reigned over the global order for so long now sort of says, first of all, that I am different to you, then that I am better than you, I control you, and I do so because it is rational for me to do that. And this has all been sort of contained by the idea that, oh, these are, liberal Enlightenment values.
And not freedom.
May I ask a question this time?
Please.
What society that is not liberal has done better on that counts in the history of the world?
I mean, you are sort of thinking of the world as it looks today, where we have these regional blocks, that we can compare and pit against one another. But of course, there was a point in history, where societies were far smaller, for instance, where you had city-states, which had all kinds, I mean, you mentioned earlier that
horrible forms of repression.
In some of them, and then in others, there was actually the fact of the imposition of the liberal order, which I agree, has come with so many benefits. And in the world as it looks today, we do need to hold on to things like democracy and individual rights, absolutely. But to ignore the fact that, people's entire cultures, knowledge systems, their rights were taken away from them in the name of liberalism and has continued until very modern history is precisely why liberalism is becoming a kind of moot ideology at a time when actually it would be needed the most.
So are you saying that because liberalism didn't achieve what it said it would do, that the ideals were there, but you're saying because it didn't achieve them in some
because it didn't even try to achieve them, because it was so unaware of its myopia. And still is today. And, we see in the past 5 years alone, we can see how, with the COVID pandemic and then with these huge Black Lives Matter protests, and now with the absolute worst atrocity with what is happening in Gaza, and people are still going on about how we need liberalism, where liberalism has shown in so many instances that it is not actually willing to perform the political ideology.
Is it liberalism that's the fault, or the way in which it is offered, or the false way, perhaps?
We can't distinguish between the two at some point. What it is and what it does are the same thing. Also.
Sorry, Yascha.
Well, let me say two things. First, both have now brought up COVID. Another line of similarity. I think there are significant ways in which we overstep what the government should have done in COVID, and there's some. Did liberal democracy do better on COVID, or did China do better on COVID?
Well, liberal democracy...
Hang on 1 second.
Did democracies do better on COVID, or did authoritarian countries do better on COVID?
Did democracies not have vaccine?
Yascha, I will bring you in 2 seconds.
Well,
Yascha, carry on.
democracies invented the vaccines that saved us from COVID.
And then imposed the vaccine apartheids. So this again, shows the sort of... Yes, there was a vaccine apartheid. Many countries in the world were not allowed.
That's a very, very simple choice you have today. Reality is messy. There are many ways in which our societies are imperfect. And part of the wonderful thing about liberal ideals is that they give you a standard by which to measure them and to say, we're falling forward in these ways and you have to fight against that. But we have a choice either of fighting to recognize what is good in our societies relative to any other society in the history of the world and fighting to make it better. Or we can go back to that mythical society before liberalism arrived that somehow had things right, even though Minna couldn't name a single example. Or we can go to the future mythical society where there's going to be some CEO who's somehow going to be wonderful and competent and acting in your interests. I think we choose what we have.
All right. I will bring you in a minute. Let me just bring Curtis in briefly. Do you take that view, do you accept that view that things that can go wrong, which we've clearly demonstrated, doesn't necessarily undermine?
There's an interesting contrast in the way Yascha talks about monarchy and democracy, because when he talks about monarchy, he's like, how do you make this perfect? How do you assure that it is perfect? And when he talks about liberalism, he's like, well, it's messy. It's never going to be perfect. And if you look at sort of the history of, I find, say, a fair amount to criticize about Elizabeth I. I don't think she was perfect at all. But how would you make your point to Elizabeth I that, monarchy is terrible? She's a religious pluralist. She's a, Did she ban a couple of plays? Yes, she did. Was she perfectly liberal? Yes, she was. No, she wasn't. But, at the same time, like the idea that, the England in which you get arrested for tweets, which is the result of, many centuries of, going back to the English Civil War, of rebellion against that old regime, seems to have resulted in a system which is much more illiberal than the society of Elizabeth I. And I think that that's worth noting, because when you see a thing contradict itself over that many centuries, something's maybe kind of wrong.
Very few Catholic priests have been executed in this country, I think, in the recent past. Let me bring Minna in, the point you wanted to make about.
It was just a short point in response to what Yascha was saying, that we can envision a world where liberalism still is relevant and how that would be a sort of a better world. And I just want to offer something else, that we can also envision a world in which freedom really is something that is valued, and anti-authoritarianism in whatever form it shows up, whether in liberalism or in far-right ideology, is not the thing that we desire. And one of the ideologies, or perhaps the only ideology, that centers freedom in that way for everyone is actually feminism. So it's not the case that, liberalism, the way you rhetorically sort of bolstered liberalism as the ideology of the future. I think there are other contenders.
All right. Let's move on a little bit to the last question. I do want to get this in. Is the heyday of liberalism over, and will it need to be modified for it to survive? Well, I don't think you want it to be modified, but do you think, in where it's going in the future, that the heyday is over? It's had its time.
We can define liberalism in a lot of different ways. I think marketplaces of ideas are tremendously important. I think freedom of thought is tremendously important. I would say that, as someone who is on the edge of the Overton window, or, instead without it. And I want to, again, paint a stark difference between freedom and power, because the advocates of liberalism are constantly confusing these things. And actually, freedom of thought and the attribution of power to the marketplace of ideas are not the same thing. And when you take power out of the marketplace of ideas and you let ideas contend solely on whether they are true or not, and not whether they are powerful or not, I think you actually get much better ideas. And so, for the great, for example, good friend of Voltaire's, did they have a few differences? They did. But was he comfortable with that level of freedom? He was. You constantly see the people that are fighting for liberalism. There's an episode in, James II is overthrown in England because he basically tries to enforce religious toleration. He says, we're going to tolerate the dissenters and the Catholics. And the dissenters, who are really the philosophical ancestors of today's liberals, are like, no, you shouldn't tolerate Catholics. Don't tolerate us if you're going to tolerate Catholics. And so you constantly see that illiberalism evolves spontaneously out of liberalism, that it contains the seeds of its own negation.
Or possibly out of the incompetence of monarchs in the past who didn't manage to do it.
I mean, you can see it. James II was a very competent monarch.
Gosh. Okay. Let me ask you then, Yascha, heyday of liberalism. Have we gone past it?
I don't think we have. I think when you look at the history of liberalism, liberalism encounters serious crises about every 75 or 100 years. So in the middle of the 19th century, there was a serious problem with the way that liberalism was conceived at the time, not really being up to the job of regulating an industrial society. And there was a real moment of crisis for liberalism. In the middle of the 20th century, there was a moment in which fascism and communism were rising around the world. And it looked for a number of decades as though liberalism was in the past. This is one of the things that motivated von Mises at the time, when it looked like, even after World War II, we had all given up on liberalism. Yet I think liberalism is the ideology that helps to explain why the second half of the 20th century was so much better for so many nations around the world, including the global south, than in the first half of the 20th century. And now I think we're in the third big crisis of liberalism. And each time liberalism found the resources within itself to reckon honestly with its shortcomings, to reformulate what a renewed liberalism for its time would look like, and to allow us to therefore meet the challenges of the moment. And
taking on some of what Minna was saying though, about the way it hasn't worked in the past. I mean, does it reform itself? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it needs to reform itself. It needs to reform itself absolutely in a way that makes our current societies less driven by the preferences of a professional managerial class that is imposing a lot of its values on ordinary people, as Curtis says, and a society that lives up to ever closer to the ideal of making sure that irrespective of what gender you have, irrespective of what ethnic group you come from, you are actually valued as a true equal in society, as Minna says. But I think that it is absolutely liberalism, which means that on both of those points, we are better today than we were in 1950. And we're a lot better today than we were in 1850. And I just want to say one thing, because Curtis said, you're talking about, liberalism, you say, oh, there's some good things and some bad things. Then with dictators and monarchs, you just point to the bad things. When you look at how horrible life is today in North Korea, in Venezuela, in Zimbabwe in many ways, in so many societies around the world where you lack the basic liberal freedoms, you recognize that in politics, what you can achieve is always less perfect than the thing that you might suffer if the worst comes to pass. Think of the best society today or ever in history. You're not going to come up with something very convincing. That's why Minna couldn't answer my question earlier. Think of the worst society you might imagine living in. Nazi Germany, Stalinist, Russia, all kinds of places. They are absolutely horrible. And so here's the difference. Liberalism has never been perfect. But for nearly all of its existence, it has allowed most people to have pretty decent lives. You look at the record of all of the alternatives, and for most of the years in which it actually ruled the world, it was a very, very bad system for most people. And that's why I choose liberalism any time of the day.
Okay. Minna, let me ask you, what do you criticize liberalism very strongly. Do you feel that it will survive? Do you think it needs to change, perhaps taking on board some of the things you said, and that might give it extra life, which might be a good thing? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I don't think that liberalism will survive because it is so reluctant to face its own shadow in a way. And I think we're seeing evidence of that on this panel. And Yascha keeps somewhat smugly saying that I wasn't able to respond to, the question of if there would have been other societies. I mean, we've lived under patriarchal rule for millennia. So as a woman, there would be no other society that I would refer to and say, oh, that was better. And yes, humanity has made progress in many regards, and in some ways thanks to liberalism. I grew up in Lagos in Nigeria under military dictatorship. So I'm by no means an advocate of monarchy or dictatorship or anything like that. And I do think that liberal values are important. But there's a huge blind spot that liberals are reluctant to deal with. And as we are moving to these authoritarian, dictatorial regimes, I just think it is deeply unfortunate that even, as we have sat here today, we keep wanting to reproduce these absolute fantasies of liberalism being so progressive, instead of actually really contending with its blind spots.
Could you see it in some way embracing feminism or being driven by feminism or moving in the ways that you wanted? I mean, is that a combination?
I could see that happening if we actually, were willing to contend with the issues that I and many decolonial and feminist thinkers have been raising against the liberal order. But as we're seeing, as I mentioned, with Gaza, and by the way, with COVID, what I meant was that, it was very obvious that there was an inequality in who was receiving vaccines, who was receiving healthcare. It was very class, very gendered, very racialized. So that was what I was referring to. And we're seeing the same now with Gaza once again. And that conversation is not happening among liberals. Instead, there's this constant pontification of, liberalism is the order that the world needs. Well, deal with the world as it is at present moment.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below.
With a free trial, you can enjoy the full talk and thousands more.
Thank you for being part of the conversation.